To help you understand the seriousness of the situation, we'll start with a video recorded by Benny Johnson, who reads excerpts from the world press about how one after another on a cruise ship, and this is happening right now, passengers and crew members are dying.
Dutch authorities will attempt to repatriate The Dutch authorities will try to evacuate 2 sick people from the cruise liner, where a serious outbreak of the suspected hantavirus has already claimed 3 lives. This is the first statement from ocean-wide expeditions confirming that they are facing a serious situation. Dutch authorities agreed to lead efforts to repatriate 2 people with symptoms of the disease. If successful, the ministry will coordinate the process. However, Cabo Verde authorities are hesitant to proceed. Local media report that, according to the president of the Institute of Public Health, Cabo Verde believes the ship should continue its journey and passengers should not disembark in Cabo Verde in order to protect the local population. Let's find out the details.
The ship requested permission to let passengers disembark, but the local authorities set up a cordon and did not allow a single person to leave the ship. They didn't let a single person go ashore, keep sailing, and, well, die somewhere else. They didn't even say please. And this is happening right when our government and many others are engaging in deceitful and dishonest actions. The case tied to the 2019 virus is starting to heat up, to unravel, I would even say. If we act like the governor of New York did during COVID-19 and like the Democratic Party leadership in America in general, then we should bring a cruise ship, a liner, to the U.S. and follow Benny's suggestion.
And then there will be an unexpected outbreak. Oh, an unexpected outbreak. Strange. Dr. Fauci has been in office since the time of Gerald Ford. Did Dr. Fauci ever predict disease outbreaks during Nixon's time or under Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, Carter, Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, or Joe Biden?
Well, that's an exaggeration. Of course, because Mao Zedong and Genghis Khan were still worse than Cuomo. He's a distant third. But what exactly happened in 2020, 2019, 2021 that is still being covered up by the Democratic administration and the press? Most importantly, by scientists and doctors.
I have been effectively black. I have no more illusions about our scientific and medical establishment. I don't believe they care about our interests. I believe they are medical communists who created virus mutants using animals to attack people and establish their unified globalist world government and global communism, and I can prove it to you. Here's how. I have a video where Fauci describes COVID 3 years before it appeared. Let's set aside the pandemic response plans from the correspondence between Epstein and Gates. They clearly knew this would happen. But if you look into it, you'll see that Dr. Fauci led the bioweapons development program after September 11th. The Patriot Act gave him unlimited Pentagon funding for these developments right here in America.
Then, after Congress banned the research, Fauci and others, he wasn't doing it alone, moved this research overseas. Well, we already know about China, Wuhan. But where else, we don't know yet.
Continuation. Until Dr. Fauci moved to China and created the COVID virus. And then he predicted the COVID virus right here.
Jimmy, the fact that the future administration will face a serious challenge in the field of infectious diseases, well, like chronic ones, I mean already existing diseases.
He's referring to Donald Trump's administration, and that's only the first.
And there will also be a sudden outbreak.
An unexpected outbreak. Strange. Dr. Fauci has served since Gerald Ford's presidency. Did Dr. Fauci ever predict that there would be an unexpected outbreak during Nixon or during Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, or Joseph R. Biden? No, he only predicted that one administration would have a sudden outbreak because he damn well knew what he was going to do. And I have to tell you, when I see news about large sudden outbreaks, I immediately go to Dr. Fauci. And maybe I'm just old-fashioned, I don't know. I'm not sure. At least I honestly admit my biases, so it's up to you to decide.
Fauci got a full pardon from Biden. Whatever he did, up until the moment when Biden left office and signed that paper for him, the pardon for...
Все, ему вообще все прощается.
Both what is known and unknown, and most importantly, So if we find out that he poisoned, killed, and cut up 36 people, he is already forgiven. Nothing will happen to him under American law. In fact, Fauci, it seems, didn't kill 36 people, but 36 million people. Well, and of course, he continues to enjoy life. But his assistant, well, let's say his assistants didn't get a pardon from Biden. And they started to get caught.
The origin of COVID-19. Former official Naya Ida has been charged with concealing federal documents during the COVID-19 pandemic. Why would you hide documents unless you were the one who created the pandemic and used some mechanism to spread this virus among the population?
Create a virus, release it into a crowd of people, and then lie low and wait. The number one goal is to stop Trump, to stop America's progress. Because if America develops well, if everything goes well in America, then Trump will be reelected even with a vaccine. But this way, he won't. Well, and secondly, of course, the number two goal is to make billions, or maybe even trillions, by the way.
So, our constitutional guarantees during COVID. We believed that doctors and authorities did not create the virus, did not release it, and did not spend funds from the Patriot Act on bioweapons. But, Senator, if they had done that, they would have preserved the evidence, not destroyed it. That is exactly what we see in the indictment and arrest this week of David Morenz, a scientist from Fauci's team. Bring us up to speed. Your agency is key here. You're on the front lines, and I know there's a new report out.
Senator Ron Johnson has received all the latest data on how we were milked, scaring us and along the way poisoning us with all sorts of stuff. They injected some kind of potion called a vaccine, a medicine, while at the same time hiding from us the real medicines and drugs to stop this epidemic, which they themselves orchestrated. The senator's word is final. Ron, come here.
First, I want to give a big round of applause to my teams. Thank you to my team. A couple of years ago, during an investigation, the Biden administration didn't give us any documents, none at all. From SAPK, we requested documents from a number of universities, including the University of North Carolina. This one, because from the University of Texas, we received 15,000 pages in response to our request, and my staff found a needle in a haystack among them. They found a letter to David Morgans. We didn't know anything about him. It's amazing how they found it. But that's the very letter where he boasted that his employee Perfoya taught him how to delete emails. And now he says, send secret stuff to my Gmail. That's a violation of the Archives Act. He admits he's destroying documents, evading the law. So, I'll repeat, of course, we handed this over to the Inspector General in the Biden administration. They did nothing, that Inspector General's office. It took President Trump coming in to, let's say, reorganize that office. And finally, we got an Inspector General who took up this case, and we got an indictment against E. David Morgans, which again is probably just the tip of the iceberg. I assume you mean the very report that was presented right after yesterday's hearings. It contains direct evidence that the FDA knew about the deliberate concealment of these documents. Let's discuss this in a more private setting. You don't send something like that by email. We see the same evasion, the same concealment. But the main news of our report is March 1, 2021, less than 3 months after the emergency authorization was granted. Head of the CBR, Peter Marks, received a detailed briefing from Anna Schitt-Schwarzman. She was an FDA expert and worked with the author of the algorithm that analyzed VAERS data. They came to Peter Marks, held a briefing, and stated that due to the similarity of the two injections and the increase in VAERS reports, the algorithm should have. It concealed and masked all side effects as well as safety signals. They created an advanced system presenting the results after 26 days. They identified 49 cases of extreme masking and 25 safety signals after it was removed, including sudden cardiac death, strokes, pulmonary infarction, and Bell's palsy. Peter Marks and the FDA simply ignored this. As a result, she was removed from her duties and told to immediately stop all further work.
So the U.S. government knew that the vaccines had many and very serious consequences. They hid them from you and me, and you and I. And you and I were dying because the Democrats wanted to get rid of Trump and make money. Make a fortune, by the way. And not the bloodthirsty capitalists, as they always try to convince us, greedy, bloodthirsty capitalists, but the kind, virtuous, caring politicians, practically speaking to the country with tears in their eyes. We will save you, and the suckers believed it. Can you imagine that half the country turned out to be suckers? The only thing that's at least a little bit satisfying is that in Europe and Asia, well over half the people were idiots like that. Idiots who believe in good, selfless politicians who care. Politicians who care about the people of their countries as if they were their own children. By the way, we should check how they actually care for their own children. How can people be so stupid? Well, obviously you can. Here you go. This is what you call proof.
So this is March 2021, March 2021. They knew they would hide the safety signals using analytics. And Benny, I didn't need any model at all. I showed a chart. In 1990, there were only a couple hundred reports of vaccine deaths in VAERS, but in 2021, there were 21,000. How is that? Houston, we have a problem. I don't like it. I didn't need it. Math wasn't needed at all. But they hid behind a convenient algorithm so that Peter Marks, when talking to the victims whom they themselves treated, kept repeating the same thing. We don't deny the injuries, but we don't see any signals of safety issues. We have a documented record. Right up until December 22, he kept repeating it. We don't see any safety signals at all, fully realizing that their own system is blocking them. Isn't that disgusting? His action is evil. Let me finish. I'm still sorry. No, please. 2021 was also the first year when NIH started treating people injured by injections, people like Brian Dressen. They were treating these people. They had about 23 people NIH successfully treated them. Not that they completely cured them, but they gave them real help. But NIH, the staff there, told these people, keep quiet, stay silent. We will conduct research, we will publish everything. You know, we acknowledge your injection injuries, but for now, keep quiet. And of course, those people were just grateful because they couldn't get treatment anywhere else. No one acknowledges these injection injuries. They were grateful and kept quiet. Do you think the FDA would publish this? Do you think the FDA has ever acknowledged the harm from these injections? The answer is no. And here we are in the 2020s, and they still haven't done it. I mean, it's just disgusting.
That's an accurate description. They're sick. They're poisonous snakes disguised as our neighbors and co-workers.
People were discouraged from doing autopsies were not encouraged. Getting them was almost impossible. But 96 autopsies of children were performed. The FDA and Tracy Beth Hoke studied the data. 10 children definitely died from the COVID vaccine. And yet, their risk of being harmed by COVID itself was practically zero. We know, kids, we've seen athletes collapse right on the field, TV hosts. They came up with a new abbreviation, SADS, Sudden Adult Death Syndrome. People are shocked. What's going on? I don't even know. It's strange. In 2021, people started dying. Athletes in their prime are dropping dead or losing consciousness. Officials are confused. Yeah, it's strange. Let's come up with an abbreviation, call it sudden death syndrome. Search. Let's say we don't know what it is.
Since Biden protected Fauci himself, arrests have already started, but only of his assistants. They started with Fauci's senior advisor. Let's see what happens next.
Conservatives are celebrating after Dr. Anthony Fauci's senior advisor was charged with hiding federal documents related to the origins of COVID-19.
David Morans, a colleague of Dr. Fauci, is accused of criminal conspiracy against the United States, as well as hiding and destroying evidence during a federal investigation. And Assistant Prosecutor Todd Blanche stated that these charges represent a gross abuse of trust at a time when the public needed him most during the height of the pandemic. Morans will appear in court next week. He faces decades in prison. He is accused of attempting to circumvent requests under the Freedom of Information Act. And the evidence for this, in my opinion, is compelling. He hid correspondence from public access by requiring the use of personal Gmail instead of the official NEI email. He says, and we have emails where he writes, no, don't send it, don't do that, because obviously they are trying to hide their correspondence from being made public. And in this correspondence, they discuss ways to minimize reputational damage for the scientists at the Institute in Fauci's circle because of their early actions. As soon as the pandemic started, basically, Fauci and all these people were like, oh, damn, it looks like this really could have been a lab leak as a result of the research we funded. This is going to be really bad for us.
Not one, not two, but dozens of scientists, doctors, and pharmacologists were involved in the deception, practically in the murder of millions. And they didn't feel a single ounce of guilt or remorse. Not one of them feels it at all. Instead, they were discussing how best to cover up their criminal activities. Not a single one of them. Scientists, the most honest, the wisest, the most moral people, not a single one in the world came forward and warned us that tens of thousands would die from these vaccines, that children would die. But there was a lot of money. There was a lot of money. And this sealed the fate of tens or even hundreds of thousands, I think. Americans, Filipinos, Italians, and others, including Romanians and Rwandans. In Rwanda, fewer people died because they had less money, and that's why fewer vaccines were sent to them. There's not much you can get out of them. You're not going to take sugarcane as payment, right? But now let's get to the most important part of our video. Listen to the expert who needs no introduction. This is at the Senate hearings.
I believe I'm the most published individual. I believe I am the author with the most publications among everyone who has testified on COVID-19 issues at these hearings. I have seen and examined more patients, I have studied more data, and I am one of the most published experts in the world on this topic. And as a cardiologist, I can tell you that my role in this has been to fight disease and save lives. And above all, do no harm, do no harm. Let's discuss myocarditis, heart damage from COVID-19 vaccines. I'm a cardiologist. I know this topic well. I've examined thousands of patients with this problem, thousands. Before the pandemic, I had only 2 such patients in all that time. There are 1,065 articles in peer-reviewed literature about myocarditis caused by the COVID vaccine. So let me briefly summarize their main points. So let's begin. I was alarmed by a study from St. Louis University dated August 18, 2021. Verma and colleagues in the New England Journal of Medicine. A 42-year-old man at a Washington clinic with post-vaccination myocarditis. Infection was ruled out. The cause was the vaccine. He is in the hospital. This is one of our best hospitals in the US. He dies 3 days after getting the shot. There's no saving him. Dr. McCullough, please move the microphone a bit further away. All right. Then, one case was described by Corey Chu and his colleagues. This was a younger man. Just a few days after the Pfizer vaccine, he ends up in the hospital. He dies within 8 hours after admission. As a cardiologist, I can tell you this doesn't even happen with heart attacks. He dies within 8 hours. I studied all the slides and images that the Koreans showed us. It looked as if someone had gone over that heart with a blowtorch. It was completely burned out by inflammation. His heart was destroyed. These cases were widely known and should have attracted everyone's attention at the time. Everyone should have been extremely focused. It is unacceptable for people to die from vaccination if the cause is the vaccine itself. Then Gill and his colleagues from Connecticut. Published in the Archives of Pathology, 2 boys, 16 and 17 years old, who died a few days after receiving the Pfizer vaccine. These are teenagers. Their parents found them dead at home. They are in complete shock. They are demanding an autopsy. They are involving the University of Michigan and the University of Minnesota to study the autopsy results. Myocarditis caused by the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine undeniable. This is a case confirmed by autopsy results. Victoria.
Can you imagine taking 2 children to get vaccinated when all the doctors and scientists, just good people, and the government say that it prevents the most terrible disease and death, and that it is absolutely harmless? And coming home from work to find your 2 children dead, who died because these politicians wanted to get rid of Trump and make a couple of trillion on the side. And then for years, these parents are told that they're disgusting Trumpists and traitors because they say the vaccine killed their children. Now get ready for a shock.
This is the full story of VAERS and the number of deaths reported in connection with the vaccine. Until 2021, there were a couple of hundred per year, and then suddenly 2,725 deaths worldwide. Why?
Before 2021, there were about 200 deaths per year, but in 2021, it wasn't 250 or 428, it was 21,725.
And everybody saying, no,
Everyone keeps saying that it's safe and effective.
страдавших от вакцины просто газлайт.
They weren't treated and still aren't. Nothing. By the way, there's no compassion, Governor. I could fill this room with photos of people who died because of the COVID vaccine. I could fill this room, but it's denied, and these people couldn't get help. In June of 2021, I was holding meetings in Milwaukee. The affected women wanted only one thing, to be heard and believed, but that still hasn't happened. Do you understand? They're not politicizing the issue. They need help. They're looking for compassionate doctors who acknowledge their illness, not deny it or gaslight them. Basically, take a look at this chart, and they're still denying it, saying there's nothing to see here. It's safe and effective. And here's the next chart. Current VAERS data, 38,607 deaths worldwide from COVID vaccines. And VAERS significantly underreports this data. The data is underreported by 10 or even 100 times. David Dahlgren reports 28 deaths on the day of the shot or within a couple of days. VAERS does not prove a connection, but it's a correlation that should have been studied, yet it was ignored and censored. Anyway, that's enough about that. Dr. McCullough, please. I've just described in general terms the harmful mechanisms of this injection as a layman. Could you and Dr. Vaughn elaborate? Since I think both of you have already spoken about this again in simple terms, could you explain why it caused so much harm in so many different ways because of biodistribution? Dr. McCullough.
8.5% of Americans got vaccinated, 20% did not, 20% did not get vaccinated. For me, the vaccine was never safe enough. The messenger RNA developed by Pfizer and Moderna was chemically modified to become invulnerable to being broken down by the body's enzymes. Messenger RNA has been found in the hearts of people who died after vaccination. It has been found in the brain. The spike protein. It is detected throughout the body. 3 studies have already confirmed that the spike protein circulates in the blood for 6 to 9 months after vaccination. This part of the virus, its lethal component, continues to circulate in the blood of vaccinated people. Their level in the blood keeps rising. This is a real killer protein. It cannot be safe. It was never intended to be safe in the first place.
What Dr. Matkali just said, I want you to hear one more time. He said this was not specifically created to be safe.
Safety trumps. It was said that safety comes above all. We will not tolerate lies about medicine. Blumenthal's poster falsely claims that vaccines, including the COVID vaccine, have saved millions of lives. Let's look at the facts. Senator Blumenthal, does the vaccine consent form say it will save your life? Of course not. It's not in the efficacy data either. There were no randomized placebo-controlled studies proving that COVID vaccines reduce mortality or hospitalization. Not even reliable, non-randomized data. Fortunately, COVID mortality has decreased for 3 reasons. We all got sick, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, developing herd immunity. We developed early treatment methods. This is the achievement of Operation Warp Speed. We used all its tools and additional medications. We treated patients at home with complex protocols so they wouldn't end up in the emergency room. That's why Governor Green didn't see our patients. They recovered at home. The third reason, the virus mutated into a milder form. This coincided with the start of mass vaccination. You can't mistakenly attribute saving millions of lives to the vaccines.
But this is exactly what we repeated every day like a mantra. It's a deception. Both the virus and the vaccines are tools for manipulating fools. We have been and continue to be manipulated. And who is preventing this from coming out so that it becomes known? The Democratic Party of the United States of America and all the liberal socialist parties of Europe. Hundreds of thousands of killers, in white coats, those we call doctors, tens of thousands of pharmacists, scientists and universities working for grants for whom truth, honesty, and morality mean nothing. Do not kill, do not steal, do not cause pain. Your neighbor, your fellow man, means nothing to them. It means absolutely nothing because for a handout in the form of grants, positions, or awards, they have betrayed and are selling us for even less than 30 pieces of silver. They sent thousands to their deaths. How are they any different from the Gestapo officers in the extermination camps for Roma, Jews, and simply those who were discontent? How are they different from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps who were just executed? The ones who shot either 30 or 40,000 people there. These people sent far more than 30 or 40,000 to their deaths. They even demanded that children be vaccinated. I think they demanded that children be vaccinated from the age of 2, knowing that it could kill them. How are they any different from the Russians in Bucha who fired tank shells at cars with refugee families? How are they any different from the Inquisition? Oh, the terrible Inquisition. How are they any different from those who burned women at the stake so that people would think it would end the plague or cholera and wouldn't have any more complaints against them? Dear graduates of Harvard, the Sorbonne, Cambridge, Stanford, and Yale, which one of them stood up and said, "Guys, this is murder, I can't take part in it"? There was Dr. Zelenko. He met with Trump 2 days before. Out of all the universities, they started to smear him. His colleagues from university labs and companies wrote and spoke about him as if he were the main enemy of humanity. Thank God. I spoke with him several times before they hounded him until he got cancer. And he gave me all the instructions and parameters, and honestly, my family even stopped paying attention to COVID. And when I reported this on my channel, I was suspended, I think, for 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Not just from one channel, but from all the channels where I was broadcasting. And then, when they reopened it, they restricted distribution. No one could subscribe to me for 14 months. All right. Well, okay. Thank you, Vladimir, and may he rest in peace. Zikrono Livracha. Well, and I want to finish with a dialogue between Ron Johnson and the U.S. Secretary of Health, Robert Kennedy Jr. here. Listen.
Finally, let's just put up this graph.
Let's bring up the chart. Your radical transparency gave me 11 million pages. We found out they hid the myocarditis signal. It also turned out that they hid the risk of stroke in people over 65 years old in 2020-2023. Both signals were hidden. They downplayed their significance, but what is most concerning, and next week we will hold a hearing about this, and I have a draft report, is that they were informed. Peter Marks was informed on March 26, 2021, that the creators of the algorithm analyzing VAERS data were planning to hide adverse events. He was told that when using another system, they identified 49 cases of extreme masking, 25 serious adverse events, including heart complications and sudden cardiac death, Bell's palsy, and pulmonary infarction. Therefore, this revised report will be released in connection with these hearings. The warning signs of danger spoke for themselves, leaving no room for doubt. Take a look at the vaccine mortality statistics since 1990 when the VAERS system was launched. It's a couple hundred cases per year. Anaphylactic shock and other complications. 2021, more than 20,000 deaths. And for 5 years, the FDA keeps saying, we don't see any signals. It was a signal that was literally screaming at us. And to this day, we all keep silent about it. So there are many people involved in this cover-up who are still working at HHS, CDC, and FDA. I need assurance that these people will attend interviews. I'll have to subpoena others. I will get to the bottom of this massive cover-up.
You can talk to me. The Democrats created a special computer program to process the reports in a way that deceives people like you and me. A question for you: how will they be punished? And another question. My friends and my children's friends told me doctors and scientists don't lie. If a scientist told you something, it means that's what he thinks. He might be mistaken, of course, yes, but never will a doctor cause harm. Never, except for maybe 1 or 2 criminals. There are always those black sheep, whatever they're called. So tell me, scientists, doctors, pharmacists, and the officials we elected who receive their salaries from us. For what? To protect us, to guard us mainly. They can send all of us, absolutely everyone, to the ovens of Auschwitz. If they get paid for it, and not as much as you might think. I suspect you already know my answer, right? And what about you? There. By the way, do you want to have some fun? I have something for you, so to speak, that'll amuse you. Then listen to what the Democrats are saying about Dr. McCullough. So now I'll give, let's say, 45 examples. I'll start with what the doctor himself talked about at the Senate hearings. I want you to understand that the senator we're going to talk about now, yes, had to receive something in order to do this. I think it was a lot of money or something like that, like they gave his daughter a job where she gets paid a lot but doesn't have to do anything. Well, to pull something like that off, you have to work for it. You have to be really motivated to, for the first time in U.S. history, silence a witness before that witness even testifies without even knowing what they're going to say. So how did that happen then? There was a case at a Senate hearing in November 1920. Senator Gary Peters, well, a Democrat, and of course a Democrat. In his opening statement before witness McCullough testified, Senator Gary Peters told all of America, and it was broadcast, that what you are about to hear will be, he hadn't heard a single word yet, disinformation. So a Democratic senator called a doctor with thousands of citations, speeches in the European Parliament, and invitations from all over the place, a liar without listening to a single word. Well, that's called political censorship, which is disguised as procedure. So now, does that mean they even suggested revoking his medical certification just because he has his own opinion? So the American Board of Internal Medicine, that's, well, the American Association of Doctors, like family doctors, let's say, yes. They revoked McCool's certificate in cardiology and internal medicine not for a mistake, not for any harm he caused, but for spreading misinformation. That is, for promoting his own opinion in public speeches. This is a precedent. The professional guild is punishing a doctor for his speeches, and not for his practice. It's similar to, well, excommunication for heresy in the Middle Ages, but presented as protecting public health. He was stripped of his right to practice because he said, I discovered deception. Well, they did the right thing. He betrayed them all. They were making good money off of it, and he's a traitor. Now, basically, so the scientific community called for regular crackdowns on dissenters. An academic article in a prestigious medical journal, the year 2023, I think, yes. It uses, what was it called? The Journal of Evaluation in Clinical Practice. I think something like that. So the journal is about definitions in clinical practice. I don't know how to translate it exactly. So that's it. About Makalo, they said he was an example supporting their argument that regulators, well, those who regulate them, should systematically punish doctors who express opinions different from those of the associations. Wow. So, a peer-reviewed journal is openly promoting the idea that medical professionals who disagree with the official party or government line or their associations should be stripped of their right to practice. That's similar to Stalin's Soviet Union. Even under Khrushchev, they didn't go that far. They sent people to mental hospitals, but not this. This isn't a scientific discussion. This is a kind of sanction policy wrapped in the guise of science. Next, what else do I remember? Oh, the employer's lawsuit because someone speaks in their free time, not even at work, just speaks, doesn't do anything, and not at work, but in their free time. Makalu's former employer sued him, that was in 1921, and got a temporary restraining order that Makalu was not allowed to mention the name of that company. In fact, it was to silence his speech, because he was saying, guys, they kept falsifying things against us. We can't mention the name of our company. The lawsuit was eventually withdrawn, I think. Somewhere, I think, in February 1923. He fought this for about a year and a half or two. He spent a lot of money. That is, Baylor himself, the organization backed down. They realized they would lose on the merits, but 18 months of reputation. The doctors. The reputational damage has already been done. The use of the corporate legal apparatus as a means to silence the doctor. One of the few. As we already know. Well, all right, the last one. After all those scandals, he was invited by Rogan, and Fox invited him for an interview. Then there was the New York Times. So, AP, Science Feedback? They systematically use McCullough's appearances on Rogan's podcasts and Fox News as an independent argument against him. But they never once discussed the content of what he said there. This turns scientific guidance on its head. It's not that he's wrong because the data says so. He's wrong because he appears on the wrong platforms. He went to our enemies. We don't like them. Well, it's kind of like an inquisition. Communicating with heretics is considered complete proof of heresy. That is the common denominator of all five. I gave you examples. None of these actions dispute McCullough's data or McCullough on the merits. All five are procedural, corporate, guild-like. You could say it's the Middle Ages. And rhetorical mechanisms of suppression used instead of scientific debate. And that's shocking. Because when people tell you, our doctors, our scientists, what are you talking about? You think, oh my God, what a sucker. Don't argue with them. They're suckers. They love being deceived. There, so Galambus warned me, my, so to speak, teacher. I studied under him, not because I knew him personally. When social science turns into a tool of state and corporate coercion rather than free inquiry, he also had a word for it that you can't always say on podcasts, broadcasts, and other radio shows. But let's put it this way, it's the end for us and our freedom. Oh, I came up with a substitute for that word. Well, all right, that's it. Let's end here. I really hope that I convinced you that in America and in the Western world in general, we have the most honest, the most moral, the most truthful scientists who would never lie, and doctors who would never do anything bad to you just to make money. because they are so moral that even the very idea of making money horrifies them. Okay. Goodbye. Let's end here. Until next time.